Hello. Unfortunately, my computer has been at the repair shop for nearly a month, and so I have not been able to record very many games. But that doesn't mean that we have stopped playing. So I wanted to take a couple of minutes to quickly summarize Runequest 1978 sessions 4, 5, and 6, so that people who are watching along can kind of get caught up, and then recording and posting will resume at session 7. So our fourth session was uh, unexpectedly and kind of incredibly intense. It started really kind of moving with the momentum from the third session. So we had on screen Ajax's initiation into the cult of Anax, in particular, the Labyrinth subcult. Ajax was taken from his bed at an odd hour of night, brought to the Temple of Anax, conducted into the some of the private spaces of the temple for ritual, and then was actually introduced to a section of the labyrinth itself. There's quite an extensive and rather mysterious, complex under the temple, under the town. Not all of it even mapped by the priests themselves. It's very much kind of an other world. The priests brought him there, showed him a section of the temple map, a section that they knew, and then his task was to enter at one point, and then following the memory of that map, exit at another. And during this, which he did successfully, I think we have yet to see a failed map making roll from Ajax. While there, he encountered the guardian of the Annex labyrinth. What is a labyrinth without a monster in it? Of course, this was a massive bull-headed man of titanic proportions who appeared and really kind of intentionally showed himself to Ajax. Again, really showing that the magical forces of the cult are very aligned with Ajax and very focused on him. So with that, it kind of inaugurated his entry into the subcult. So he now has, several brothers in the cult who are working under Nikon, the head priest. And, he now has this new status as a very young, kind of noteworthy initiate. Um, and on that point of, magical forces and the powers that are kind of attending to our characters, um, aligning himself to the Earth rune through this ritual, I decided also kind of closed him down to the fertility rune, which had been, kind of haunting him. We'd had him, drawing the fertility rune absent-mindedly, having these strange visionary dreams where the forces behind the fertility rune were trying to communicate with him, and this ritual, effectively cut him off from that as he is entering more deeply into the cult. He's growing stronger in some aspects of the magical world, but also losing some possibilities and potentialities and sensitivities that he has as someone who's uncommitted. So that's a big change for him. Um, from there, we moved um, into Eusebius' next move, which you will recall that as of last session, they had made a pretty sketchy plan to move into the forest and try to find their lost friend Diocles. So, in preparation for that, Eusebius decided to train in spirit binding. So he learned the spirit binding spell from his mother Xenaeus. And that those training scenes really, I think, came through in a beautiful way. We've got um, a lot of day-to-day play in this game, and the training is really a nice opportunity to sit with that, and just think about the routine. What does the everyday look like in this world? uh, and so he successfully learned spirit binding, not a no mean feat for in terms of time or resources. And once he had that spell in hand, he and Ajax went out into the woods to try to bind a spirit. And of course, if you are looking for mysterious stuff out in the woods in our game, where do you go? You go back to that bunker lab, which Ajax can find again, right? Because he mapped it, he connected with it. So even though he's not attuned to the powers of that place. He knows where it is. No one else in the stead could have found that place. He's the only anthropoid who could find that place again. So that was kind of cool. So they went out to the bunker lab, and we prepared for this summoning ritual. The rules are quite clear, like everything else in RuneQuest, incredibly functional. So I rolled up a random spirit to appear. Um, the again, kind of getting fictional input from what I knew about the space and the type of ghosts that would be around there. And I actually rolled up a spirit with they only have two stats, but between them, they can make a pretty interesting profile. So this spirit came in with a pretty low with a pretty low power score for a spirit of I want to say 13 or 14, so right even with Eusebius. But his intelligence was quite high. I want to say 16 or 17. So really like near the peak of human accomplishment there. So playing with that, I decided that this spirit was one of the research scientists here at the lab. All of these male and female spirits are kind of going around through their routines at the lab, taking samples, with spectral equipment, making notes in non-existent pages, and so when Eusebius engages this spirit, he's kind of calling him out of those cycles, breaking him out of his routine, and really kind of roiling the waters of this space. So we got some good color out of that. And long story short, like every other RuneQuest technique, spirit combat is functional, really easy to grok, and just absolutely savage and unforgiving. Um, we had a lot of back and forth, but Eusebius got beaten pretty hard by this spirit. Um, and in fact, was pretty quickly expelled from his body, so found himself, disincorporated out in the woods, and this, unspeakably ancient kind of alien, spirit was now inhabiting his body. And I think there were some roles associated with where I went with this, but my idea was that because this spirit was so sharp and knowledgeable, it would be able to kind of pick up on what was happening a little. It was very disoriented, right? But he kind of got his bearings. He started to communicate uh, in this very archaic, version of the language that the anthropoi speak. With other loan words and just weird features, but pretty quickly he started communicating and establishing that channel with Ajax, who of course like very quickly realized something was terribly wrong, and took him back to Winding Ways. He and Xenaeus, did their best to help him. We had, Ajax kind of following along. Um, but in just a really intense scene, one that I'm very sorry we didn't get to record, even though it would probably have to come with some content warnings. In this really intense scene, uh, uh, they lost Eusebius. It became clear after a couple of rolls back and forth, even with kind of Xenaeus's know-how, that Eusebius was kind of beyond help. He just didn't have the power to kind of catch back up with the spirit. Severin is what I named him, and get his body back. And so we actually, in this session, had our first player character loss. And I've got to say, I think for all of us, it was a really emotionally kind of devastating experience. Um, all of us really played our characters hard into that result. So, Ajax is obviously, for many sessions, dealing with that fallout. Um, it was particularly difficult for Eustorgios, Eusebius's father, and Xenaeus and Ajax to really kind of process what had happened. That this person they loved was gone because he's standing right there in front of them. Right, he's still breathing, but they're being told, no, he's dead. Um, and so, and we also had, it became very clear to us, right, that Severin would be, as he kind of comes to more consciousness of the situation, would just be, uh, totally in disarray. Possibly kind of suicidal, going through a psychotic break, right, as he realizes that, you know, everyone and everything he knows is long gone. So next week we jumped into a character creation session, and the results of the random attribute generation, which is really kind of central to this process, spat out some kind of interesting results. So we ended up with a character who was near the max size for a human. We're talking like size 16, 17, 18. So it's really kind of hulking woman. Uh, and which Sam, followed up with by saying she has a big beard. So she's very striking. But uh, unfortunately, he also rolled very low on dexterity. So all the other stats pretty average, but dex was actually at a 6, which is really like, I'd say, it's really, as we were looking through the weapons and the various things, we kind of realized that, at least for combat and adventuring, like dexterity 6 is too low. You can't wield most weapons without a dexterity of 7, and so Sam opted to spend all of the guild credit that he had earned on raising dexterity from 6 to 7 and kind of getting through that threshold. And so to give you, some of the situational detail that I gave to Sam, where this character finds herself, her name is Niko. So where Niko finds herself is in a splinter group of the Parthenoi. Uh, And the Parthenoi are as you know, kind of migrant, nomadic, and very anarchistic culture. So they have, a migration route that takes them across the year from the River of Death, where the cities of the ancient civilizations lie in ruins. That's one extreme of their migration, and then from the River of Death and from the cities, they go up north far into the mountains to a place called the High Holies, where they have a fixed sacred site, and much of their religious identity is based around self-expression, individualism, and deeply non coercive social structures. And so, what you end up with is this very kind of interesting tapestry of groups that come to disagreements in ideology, in practice, and then split. You basically split into different denominations if you're thinking about this religiously, and go through the year kind of staying in touch, kind of orbiting each other, but also being separate. Uh, and then as they go to the high holies, everyone's gathering there year over year, and so those splits are remedied, and new ones are created. So you get this very, interesting kind of shifting social landscape where everyone's trying out new ideas. What all this comes down to is that a new kind of religious demagogue has arisen named Callistrate, and as you will quickly ascertain from the recordings, I have been reading Aeschylus's Oresteia, so up to my neck in Greek tragedy. And so my idea was that in those cities, at one end of the pilgrimage, Callistrate had gone on kind of a hero quest into the city and found the shrine to the Furies. These are Aeschylus's Furies, right? Which in Athens, the introduction to that book tells me, were venerated by the Athenians. They were these kind of fearsome, barbaric spirits that punish matricide, but the Athenians sacrificed to them, gave them gifts, and venerated them. Uh, and so my idea was that she kind of goes down and discovers these new old gods, kind of awakens them, and also finds a bunch of plays, so this reservoir of like powerful poetic language, and comes out. She's got, a very cool tragic mask, with snakes and magical effects and stuff. And so she comes out and basically tells everyone, you know, at one time we were feared. These Furies, these women, they were so scary that everyone was bringing them tribute. No one's bringing us tribute now. No one fears us as they should. So once they feared us, and they will fear us again, is kind of the tenet of her theology. And for Niko, all of those credits that she spent on raising her decks went to Callistrate. So she, has no social bounds to anyone else. No parents, no siblings, no friends. She's here kind of alone, but devoted, to this person who has a great deal of power over her. So we started with the Parthenoi, with Callistrate's band, the Eumenides subcult, and we had Niko kind of being tasked with like shepherding the young people. They've got some young kids who have joined up, and Niko's really big, hard to miss in the woods. So she gets told, why don't you take take over watching the young kids, and go out into the woods, and while we're moving, try to gather and scavenge resources and plants. They're a pastoral society, hunting and pastoralism. So, we go out in the woods. Sam rolls on a 5% chance on find plants and rolls a 4. So, oh my God, right away we have this kind of improbable success. And, it has a big difference. They find enough plants and enough nutrition that food isn't such an issue for the group as it moves. So Calistrate is actually able to get them to where she wants to go pretty quickly, and that ends up being pretty impactful. So where they end up is a ruin from the builders. And Calistrate has learned that there are weapons stored here, and given that they're going to go out and start raiding and extracting tribute, they're in need of military hardware. So they send 3 people down into the dungeon. It was a little Dyson Logos dungeon, into this temple to find the weapons. And in a nice bit of dramatic irony, Niko rolled on intelligence to see if she could pick up that Calistrate was kind of sending in expendable people. She wasn't leading with like her lieutenant, she wasn't going herself. She's sending in people who the group could conceivably lose, right, without endangering its mission. And Niko failed her role there. They go in, they see, some cool color around these layers of civilization, and then, they find the weapons, but everyone misses their perception rolls, and they get jumped by these gray-skinned, many-legged creatures that have also been terrorizing Ajax in previous sessions. And the 2 characters with Niko do not handle themselves well. One of them is cowering in the back of this chamber, just trying to be as far away as possible. One of them manages to dodge around the monster and run up the stairs. So Niko is the only one who's standing and fighting, and she actually sets herself up pretty well. She takes some actions to try to rally the other 2, which fail, but she makes the effort. And then she's also, thanks to some spirit magic that was cast on her earlier by Calistrate, she's also able to get the jump on one of them. So she's a strike rank ahead, and so she's got her axe, her little hand axe. She's about to chop down on this thing's leg. And then we get just an improbable run of rolls. So first roll, Sam rolls a fumble. So first strike of the fight, she fumbles. We go to the fumble table. We roll again. Sam rolls like up in the 90s. So, we know this is going to be bad. This fumble is going to be fucking terrible. And then we find out she's actually going to hit her own limb in the melee. And then, Sam goes to roll the damage dice, rolls almost max damage for this. So, rolled like 99, 93, and then, the highest value on all of his damage dice. And basically, in this melee, we decided to narrate it a little bit differently. We've got the monster's legs going everywhere. We said, maybe it like catches the axe out of her hand and kind of swings it around, but her arm gets severed, drops to the ground, and she blacks out in shock. So our first strike of the game, she cuts off her own arm, and we cut away back over to Ajax, and gonna try to take some time to recover from that. And I won't go into quite as much detail for what Ajax was up to, but basically he spent a lot of the session in political discussions with Nikon and the other priests. Nikon revealed to him that the success of the Anthropoi in Winding Ways relies on what are called the tablets of Ajax. These are magical writings, scriptures that are in the center of the labyrinth and that basically provide a model for the climate and the weather of this area. And so this is how, by measuring everything, by mapping everything, the priests of Anax can ensure that Winding Ways always has enough food, always knows when to save its resources for, times of want and starvation. However, uh, that tablet has actually run out. So for about 6 months, Nikon has been flying blind and has been kind of guessing and still directing everything. And the reason that his plan was to kind of take this to his grave. But the appearance of Severin really changed things because Severin is from long ago when that tablet was made and was able to tell Nikon that there's another piece up in the mountains somewhere and give him a general idea of where that is. And so now Nikon sees the possibility of finding that and bringing it back and kind of continuing the prosperity of the anthropoi. Uh, Avid has been playing Ajax to the hilt again. I really wish we'd gotten this session on camera because Ajax responded by just making waves. First off, he kind of bulldozed Nikon into telling the other priests. He said, you can't keep this to yourself. It's selfish of you to do this, and it's even more selfish for you to put this on me and make it my responsibility. You're kind of mentoring me, and now I'm realizing you're mentoring me to solve this problem that you created, or this problem that you haven't had the guts to reveal. And so, really went hard at Nikon. The other priests know. And through that conversation, Ajax decided this isn't enough. Everyone needs to know this. So he goes to his uncle, Eustorgios, and tells him and says, we got to call a council. You're a Waller. You're a socially significant person here. You need to throw that weight around and tell everyone this. And Eustorgios agrees. So Ajax, in a couple of scenes, has basically upset the entire social fabric and religious order of the anthropoi. And that's like where we're playing, right? This society in deep crisis suddenly. We returned to Niko, briefly because we didn't want to leave it just on a cliffhanger. Out of the game, Sam was pretty bummed about what he thought was losing another character. Right, he assumed that his character was dead. But we looked in the rules, and even with that severity of wound, there was plenty of time for Calistrate and her lieutenants to come in, kill the monsters now that they knew how many there were, and then cast, a 6-point healing and basically pick up Niko's arm and sew it back on with magic. So Niko, wakes up quite a bit later with this, very scarred arm, feeling this deep shame as though she's failed. That everyone around her now, what we realized is no one was really looking at what happened. The person who fled was already up the stairs and away. The person who was cowering in the back wasn't looking. So to the people who came in, it looked like Niko, had suffered this grievous wound because she was the only one who stood firm. And so suddenly everyone's looking at her like, whoa, she's brave. She's a warrior. And again, we had kind of a further investment of magical energy in her from Calistrate, dropping 6 points of spirit magic to bring her back. And so based on that, we actually realized, like, whoa, Niko is kind of, a big deal. now. That this is really going to change her status. And so that's, we didn't see very much of it, but we played enough to kind of get an idea of what was happening. And then that created the context for where we opened in session 7, when our recording will pick back up. So anyway, that is sessions 4, 5, and 6 of Runequest. I'll start posting recordings as soon as possible. And for those of you who are kind of watching along through our saga, I hope you are enjoying it. And be sure to check out the discussion at Avid Play if you would like to, get any questions answered or look at any of the issues in more detail.